What is up? What is going on, everybody? It has been a minute, but we have a Seattle Mariners trade to talk about. The Mariners are acquiring left-handed pitcher Jose Ferrer from the Washington Nationals in exchange for catching prospect Harry Ford and pitching prospect Isaac Lyon. I will break down the trade for you guys and gals, but as always, before I do, if you can hit the like button for me, it helps the channel out tremendously. Don't forget to comment your thoughts on the team and this trade down below, and also hit that subscribe button if you're new or lurking. If you're new to the channel, I do post-game recaps for every single Mariners game, as well as break down all the moves that the team makes in the offseason and throughout the regular season as well. And believe it or not, we are just 76 days away from spring training. One of the benefits to the season lasting longer and being in the ALCS is that means we're closer to next season. And it's right around the corner, 109 days till opening day. We're almost under 100 for that, which is wild. And we have the World Baseball Classic as well. So a lot of baseball stuff coming up here in the next month or so. So it's going to be really exciting, really busy up until opening day. So trade talk. We broke down the Josh Naylor move last week or a couple weeks ago. That was easy. Obviously, I think every single fan agreed that they need to bring back Josh Naylor, and they did it. Fantastic. Good job by the front office and everybody getting that done. When I first saw this trade, I think my reaction, along with I think most people's initial thought, was a little bit of an overpay there by the Mariners to get Ferrer with Harry Ford. I think we all expected Harry Ford to be traded. I think we've all been expecting Harry Ford to be traded for like the last 2 seasons, and it just hasn't happened. But I think we all probably in our heads thought you could get a little bit more back than Ferrer. I'm still going to have it. I was going to have a Q&A video. I'm still going to out probably Monday or Tuesday. And a couple people asked about things I want the team to address, and one of them was going to be bullpen, and Ferrer would have been a name I mentioned. That's nothing fancy or special about me. A lot of people have talked about him as being a trade candidate for the Seattle Mariners. So the move makes sense. Jose Ferrer going to the Mariners makes a ton of sense. Ground ball specialist, 64.3% ground balls. That's in the 99th percentile. Fastball velos in the 94th percentile. It's a sinker. It averages 97.7 miles per hour. His walk rate is outstanding, 4.9 walks, 95th percentile on that as well. Strikeouts, chase whiff are all about average for Ferrer. But when you have such an elite ground ball rate, you can afford to give up a little bit in the strikeout area to get those ground balls. Sinker, change, and slider are the 3 pitches for Ferrer. Obviously, heavy on the sinker for him. So that makes sense. I think just people thought Ford a little bit more expensive than they wanted to give up for that. Now, all things being equal, sure, you can say it's an overpay, and that's fine. And that's still your opinion on it. Respect it. And I think that's a perfectly fair take to have on this move. But all things aren't equal, right? Like for the Nationals, if you're a Nationals fan watching this, no brainer, right? You're not looking to build a bullpen when you're a team. I actually don't have the Nationals record in front of me, but I'm pretty sure it was 90 plus losses. You're looking for everyday positional players. Now, I'm not sure what the new front office's opinions on Kyber Ruiz are, but Harry Ford should have a chance to earn that job and be their everyday catcher. And I'm wishing Harry Ford all the best. He's in the NL East. It's not going to directly compete with the Mariners unless the Mariners and Nationals meet in a World Series, in which case then, hey, more power to you. So if you're a big Harry Ford fan, you can definitely still root for him out there. And like I said, if this was a Nationals podcast, it's an absolute no-brainer. You'd always want to kind of trade relievers. If the Mariners lost 100 games, I'd say trade Brash, trade Munoz, try to get everyday positional players back. But the Mariners are a team that was 8 outs away from a World Series last year. And the bullpen was one of the reasons I think that they didn't quite get over that hump against the Blue Jays. There were some other reasons too. The starting pitching wasn't great. The bottom of the lineup struggled. We all know the issues. But the bullpen was up there as well. And the Mariners obviously agree. They've talked about the bullpen being a priority in the offseason. It was a priority for them at the trade deadline with adding Caleb Ferguson, which didn't work out. And they were close on Johan Duran, right? They were right there. And then the Phillies kind of came in, I think, last minute, sweetened the pot a little bit. Twins like the Phillies offer more, and Duran ends up going to Philadelphia. So even during the trade deadline last year, something the Mariners wanted to boost up and get better at. So, and it wasn't just the Bizarro home run, the Spire home runs. It was also some of the games where the team was down 3-4-0. When Castillo or Kirby got knocked out in some of those games, and they couldn't hold the Jays there and maybe give their offense, which is a good offense, a chance to get back into the ball game here, and they weren't able to do that. So I think bolstering the bullpen is definitely a priority for the Seattle Mariners here. Don't be fooled by the 4.48 ERA for Ferrer. He is a better pitcher than that for sure. The FIP is much lower. The ground balls, like I said, probably just found some holes last year. Now, the one thing to keep in mind, and this is where it's kind of, and it goes back to something I talked about in the last video where I said I'd like to see the Mariners improve defensively in 2026. Ferrer's kind of a perfect example for that, right? Like, one of the reasons his ERA is higher than his FIP is that the Nationals' infield defense is not very good. Well, I can't sit here and say the Mariners' infield defense is great either, right? Josh Naylor's solid. Polanco's not very good at second. Cole Young was not very good defensively. Now, Young could get better, so I won't dismiss him maybe making some strides and improvements. JP is not a very good defensive shortstop. Now, third base is an area where, and again, this is just going with what they have now. We don't know what else they're going to do this offseason, but third base is a spot where they're probably going to be better with Ben Williamson, as of right now, taking that role, should be a little bit of an improvement there. So, that is something to keep in mind, right? Like, you'd like probably Ferrer to almost be a little bit more, if you're going to make a trade, you'd kind of probably prefer more of an elite strikeout pitcher here and maybe sacrifice some of the ground balls. That's not to say these are bad, right? You'd rather give up ground balls because it's singles that sneak through. Eventually someone's going to make a play on one. You can give up 3 singles and not give up a run. You give up 3 balls 400 feet off the wall and you're probably down 1-2 at minimum. So I'd still rather have the ground balls regardless of infield defensive talent. But it is something where it's one of the reasons I'd like the Mariners to improve defensively, because you can do that. It's going to make a guy like Ferrer a lot better as well. He is under club control for the next 4 years as well. We know the Mariners, certainly value that. He's 25 years old. So he could be part of kind of that 3-headed monster in the bullpen with Munoz and Brash at the back end. And the importance of a second lefty, right, with Gabe Spire. It was something we talked about a lot last year, wanting to add. They tried it with Caleb Ferguson. It just really didn't work out. Ferrer is dominant against left-handers. I believe left-handed hitters had an OPS just above 500 against him last year. That's going to be key in the AL West. Who do you have? Yordan Alvarez, Corey Seager, Nick Kurtz. So you've got a lot of great lefty hitters in this division that Ferrer can get out in that 6th, 7th inning and then Spire later in the game or vice versa. So it does give you that second lefty to really be, dominant with Gabe Spire. 3 pitches for Ferrer: sinker, changeup, slider. Sinker was his main pitch, threw it 71% of the time last season. Changeup, was thrown 22% of the time, and slider 7% of the time. I'm curious about that changeup. I haven't dug too deep into it, but if he can improve that, maybe then, that could help him against right-handed hitters be more effective. Obviously, the sinker is what's getting guys to hit the ground balls at the rate that they do. We know the Mariners like the slider. Wouldn't be shocked to see him maybe up that slider usage a little bit. And if they think that can be a strikeout pitch, maybe that might mitigate some of the ground balls, but it gets the strikeouts up a little bit. And it's not like Ferrer can't miss bats, right? His chase rate was above average. It was in the 51st percentile. And his whiff and strikeout rates were around league average. So it's not like he can't miss bats. This isn't someone that's going up there and, I can't think of like a Kyle Hendricks type pitcher by any means. And maybe utilizing that slider a little bit more can get those strikeouts up. It might sacrifice some of the ground balls, but in T-Mobile Park, that might be something they're willing to do. The Mariners have had good eyes for some of these relievers in the past. So obviously I think there's some stuff with Ferrer that they really like. I'm absolutely fine adding Jose Ferrer. I think he is going to help tremendously in the bullpen. I do get the sentiment of the overpay that some fans have. I do. But you got to remember a few things here with Harry Ford. I do think there is a little overrated overvalue going on maybe with Mariners and their fans. It's not that I don't think Ford can be successful. I absolutely do. And there's absolutely a world where this trade doesn't work out for the Mariners. But that's every trade in baseball from every perspective, right? I thought the Mariners fleeced the New York Mets in the Kelenic, Cano, Diaz trade, right? The only player in that trade that's still productive is Edwin Diaz. So you just never know how things are going to end out. The Mariners, and I don't want to because you don't want to say well, if they could have gotten more for Harry Ford, they could have. And that that's kind of where I want to say that's not fair either, because that means you can't criticize any trade ever, right? Well, then why ever be critical of a trade? Because you just always have to trust the front office. Front offices make mistakes all the time, but they've had Ford for a few years. They've tried to probably trade him. I do think this is probably about the max value you're going to get. The power from Ford was probably more PCL driven. I think he's a good OBP guy. Defensively, I'm not sure where he's going to fall in. It's not Jesus Montero back there. I should rest in peace. That's probably not the best analogy to make at the time, but he's not a defensive, I think, liability, but I don't think it's necessarily a strength either. And I'm usually not a prospects are blocked guy. I normally don't fall into that because I think that's sort of a cop out for bad trades. Well, the prospect was blocked, because I think you can always find room for players. But with that said, is there a player in baseball that is more blocked than Harry Ford? I mean, he's just not going to catch for the Mariners at most at anything other than a backup role, catching 30, 40 games a year with Cal Raleigh here. I mean, and yes, eventually Cal will probably have to DH more or move positions down the road, but what's that going to be in minimum? I mean, the earliest that happens in 3-4 years. You're just going to hang on to Harry Ford and have him DH platoon and catch occasionally, or are you going to try to get something, for him? I'm with everybody else. Of course, I would have liked to get more. I'd like to get more for everything. I would have loved to have Ferrer plus CJ Abrams plus Mackenzie Gore back in this deal, but it's just not realistic what you're going to get in a deal like this. So I think this is probably about what the value was for Harry Ford. And that's, again, it's not a knock on the Nationals. Again, if I'm Nationals front office, I'm celebrating. I'm making this move 10 times out of 10. So it's not that I think that the Nationals don't come out in good position here either. I think it's a fantastic trade for them, but I don't think it's some sort of massive loss here for the Seattle Mariners. And again, I know I'm shocker Jay's coming on and not having a huge reaction to the trade. But, and again, this is not to be I've watched baseball longer, because there's a lot of people watch more baseball than I have. But trust me, I used to, when I was younger, I was the overreactionary to every trade person. And the only trade that I thought was truly just awful, that ended up probably being awful, was the Adam Jones, Eric Bedard deal in 2008. Other than that, these things just kind of play out and they happen. I think Harry Ford can have a fine career. I also think Jose Ferrer is a guy that could come here and absolutely help the Mariners get to the World Series and booster a bullpen that need both. That I can't speak today. Help a bullpen that needs a boost. And I think when you're a team like the Mariners that were knocking on the door of a World Series, yes, I'd love to see them make some big moves. Hopefully they have some splashes, but you also have to fill in the margins too. And I applaud that they're willing to trade prospects to do that. And this is how you do it. This is how you fill in those margins. One of the gaps was I thought the bullpen depth was lacking. Ferrer is a guy that can fill that in. Some of his numbers do compare to Gregory Santos when he came over. In fact, if you watch my Santos trade reaction, it's probably very similar to this. Santos didn't work out. Of course, that's in the back of my mind. I think with Santos, though, it was more just didn't have the drive. I think they were done. They were tired. I don't think he really wanted it. I don't like to call out players' character, but I think that's pretty evident with Gregory Santos here with how it played out. It wasn't a matter of talent. It was a matter of just drive. So I don't know Jose Ferrer personally, obviously. Another thing I will point out, he was closing for the Nationals at the end of last year, so we know he's got the makeup to handle that ninth inning as well, if need be. So there is absolutely a world here. And I want to be clear, is on both sides, right? Is there a world where Harry Ford becomes a productive everyday catcher for the Nationals? 100%. There is also a world where Jose Ferrer is one of the more dominant pitchers in the American League out of the bullpen next year. So if we want to play the angle of Harry Ford and you're going, well, Ford could do this, Ford could do this, I'll fire back and say Ferrer could absolutely be a huge back end of the bullpen weapon. Maybe, kind of a Jose Alvarado would be a comparison maybe. So do I have concerns? Yes. The Mariners infield defense makes me a little bit worried for a ground ball guy. Maybe the Mariners will use that slider a little bit more. So, and that helps the strikeouts go up, as I talked about. So there's obviously things here. I don't think this is some fleece that the Mariners did. This isn't like a trade that I looked at and just pumped my fist right away and said, yes, yes, yes. But I think it's probably more even than most people are giving it credit for at the end of the day. I think it's fair. I think it's a fair deal. And I think it's a deal that makes sense for both teams. And for a Mariners team, trust me, if Ferrer is getting that 27th out of the ALCS, Game 7 next year, you're not going to care too much about Harry Ford. We've talked about it. Like, Jerry's been kind of stubborn holding on to prospects. You got to trade some of them to get some guys in. So, yes, I would have loved to have gotten more for Harry Ford, of course. You know who else probably wishes they got more? Jerry Dipoto. But this is probably what it was going to cost here, and this is probably about the max value. And Ferrer's a guy I have a feeling that they really, really like, and they think they can make a couple, changes here or there to get the strikeouts up a little bit for him as well. Not that strikeouts weren't bad. It was just, you'd probably like to see a little bit higher with the Mariners infield defense. And that's something the Mariners could still improve too, right? There's moves to be made. They could grab someone at second base. There's been rumors of Brendan Donovan, who I think, let me check on Donovan's defense. I think Donovan's a pretty good defensive second baseman, right? I'm going to eat my words here probably in a few seconds. Average, but that's probably an upgrade from what they've had defensively. So, if you get someone like Brendan Donovan, Naylor Donovan's solid on the right side. So, and then Colt Emerson's coming up hopefully pretty soon as well. And if right now you have Ben Williamson at third, that's solid too. So there's definitely ways to improve that as well. So I'm fine with the trade. Shocker. I know it's just, guys, I always try to bring a level-headed take to it. If you don't like this trade, I get it. I do. I certainly understand why. But I do think at the end of the day, this is probably about the value that Harry Ford had. And I think you're going to like Jose Ferrer when you see him on the mound here. I think he's going to be a big weapon for this team. Relievers are always volatile, but, so are prospects too, right? So we'll see how this plays out for the Mariners. Grade, I mean, I can't really put grades on this. I think it's fine. I think it's a fine trade for the Seattle Mariners, and I think it can definitely help them in 2026. Also, some rumors that the Mariners are open to bringing Mitch Garver back now as a backup catcher. I know. People are going to jump on that as well. Garver on a $1 million salary as your backup catcher is absolutely fine. He hit left-handed pitching well last year. He's serviceable enough behind the plate. I think he's well-liked in the clubhouse as well. I'm okay, and maybe I'll get beat up for this, in the comments, but I'm okay with Ferrer and Garver over Harry Ford for 2026, and Ferrer under club control for longer as well. So I'll end it with this. Always try to end it positively, right? A Mariners bullpen that need to be bolstered was just bolstered with this move, and it got a lot better here with Jose Ferrer. So a nice upgrade for the Mariners bullpen here for 2026. Can't wait for spring training. Can't wait for the next move. You guys and gals know the offseason is just not my favorite time. And these are why, right? Like, just even talking about these moves is not my favorite thing. Doesn't mean I don't have takes on it. It's just, last couple years ago, loved the offseason, right? And the Mariners missed the playoffs. Last year, I was kind of like, man, that was kind of a crappy offseason the Seattle Mariners had. And they go on to the ALCS. We just don't know, right? But right now, the Mariners already are better to start 2026 than they started 2025. You're going to have Josh Naylor for 162. Sounds like they want to bring Jorge Polanco back. You add Jose Ferrer. We'll see maybe Brendan Donovan's in the mix, and maybe one more reliever as well. If Kansas City's opening to trading some guys, Lucas Urseg would look really good in a Mariners uniform. So we'll see. So that's my take on the trade. Like I said, I totally get it. If you're on the team, it was a bit of an overpay. It probably at the end of the day might be, but I think Jose Ferrer is going to help. So that's my take on it. There's probably people with better insights on it. You can go watch. I'm sure every Mariners fan has got their video up on it. So take care, everybody. Like, comment, subscribe. A couple months away from spring training. Go Mariners. Peace.